Good afternoon, everyone. It is our unique pleasure to present today's keynote speaker, Michael Murphy. Michael Murphy is an architect, educator, and writer whose work focuses on how the built environment shapes our lives, our health, and our communities.
Michael's recent book, The Architecture of Health, traces the history of medical design and its attempt to align architecture with health outcomes. Michael's new work looks at the ownership of the built environment and how sharing access can solve the climate and social crisis we face.
Michael is the current Thomas Venulette Chair of Architecture at Georgia Tech and serves on the board of Mass Design Group, which he founded and led until 2022, where he was the lead designer of such projects as the Butaro District Hospital, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, and the forthcoming Embrace King Memorial in Boston. Michael's 2016 TED Talk has reached almost 2,000 views, and under this leadership, Mass Design Group was the recent recipient for the AIA Firm of the Year Award for 2022.
One of his previous projects at Mass, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, was named the single greatest work of American architecture in the 21st century. Michael has taught at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, University of Michigan, and Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture Planning and Preservation. At a time when social justice is at the forefront of so many discussions, it is unique and amazing to see Michael weave social justice into his projects.
We look forward to hearing more about this philosophy and how it will manifest into the built world. Please welcome Michael Murphy.
Thank you for that nice introduction. Thank you everybody for staying. I hope we're getting close to dessert here. I appreciate this. This is such an honor to be up here, to be with you all, and to be a capstone to such brilliant and beautiful projects here in Los Angeles. It's wonderful to be back. I thought I could spend a few moments talking about something bigger about, I think, what we all do in the built environment here, which is that we're really healing people. We're changing people's lives every day. All of you are doing that, and I want to honor that and talk about it through the work that I've been able to be a part of over the last 15 years. I also want to honor that we're at a unique moment now. This incredible photograph of a 6 feet apart park, Domino Park in New York, in Brooklyn, was taken during the pandemic. It's so great to be sitting next to each other and eating next to each other and being with each other again. And it's worth just acknowledging that we've just been through something really transformative and traumatic as a people, as a city, as a world. And I think we fundamentally changed the way we think about the built environment around us based on our ability to breathe, based on the notion that we're not so sure that people next to us are going to make us healthier or sicker, or the spaces that we're in are going to keep us from breathing uncontaminated air. This idea that buildings could make us sick was first brought to me 16 years ago today, actually, December 1st, 2006, when I was a first-year student at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, and I went to a lecture by this amazing man, Dr. Paul Farmer, kind of great visionary doctor of the world's poor, and he was talking about all of the amazing work that his organization was doing across the world, trying to address health inequities, provide infrastructure and hospital medical services to the poorest communities in the world, but also he was talking about buildings that they were doing as a medical organization, hospitals, clinics, homes. And when I went up to him afterwards as a young architecture student to say who were the architects that he had hired to work on these projects, he said, "Architects, I just drew the last hospital on a napkin. Why would I ever hire an architect?" And he said, more to the point, where have you been? Why haven't you come to us and seen how you can serve our needs? We need your help as architects and designers and people in the built environment. We need to understand how that industry can serve our communities and make them heal, make them healthier. In February of this year, we lost Paul. He died of a heart attack in the hospital that we designed together, which I'll talk about here. We ended up working together, living in northern Rwanda, where he was building a new emerging healthcare system with the government. And in this hospital, because we didn't have access to large funding resources to pay for large mechanical ventilating systems, and we had airborne diseases that were causing infection, tuberculosis in this case, we designed with these doctors together a building that could breathe, a building that could get enough air changes per hour just naturally so that we could reduce the transmission of airborne diseases like tuberculosis, but also now COVID. The idea that buildings have to breathe again, that buildings make us sicker, can make us healthier, this very idea just came out of the simple notion that we need architecture. We need our buildings to serve us. We need these pieces of infrastructure in order to live not just thriving lives, in order to live our lives. And that was very evident, I think, in the last couple of years. We've all been through this great spatial awakening that the buildings around us can protect us, and they can also harm us. Simple ideas about architecture, breathing, are about keeping people in spaces that have maximum airflow, like outdoor waiting areas or outdoor hallways. We can do that here in northern Rwanda. But it also meant, as we grew as an organization to accommodate these types of projects, that question of airflow, that question of the movement of air, of infectious air, the separation of people from potential contamination became a driving force of all of the architecture. This is a second hospital, the Nyarugenge Hospital, which opened last year. And instead of a low-lying pavilion-type hospital, this is more of a mid-rise facility. But you can see it's wrapped in this hallway, that hallway that keeps people outside and creates this ability to protect both the climate and the conditions of the air and the sun from the patients and never being corrupted again by new additions. And you can see that here with the landscape coming through it. All of this is about breathability. All of this is about making the spaces healthier. When we were asked to do a clinic that directly addressed tuberculosis, this time in Haiti after the earthquake, the transmission was not between patients and patients of the disease, it was between patients and doctors. Keeping and protecting caregivers is really the kind of key component of medical facilities. We saw that during the pandemic as well, and here we were able to design a facility that could move air in such a way that it could protect the caregivers and make sure that they knew that they were safe providing care to infectious patients. You can see that here. All of this got me thinking about hospitals themselves, and that hospitals are not just these kind of technical and functional facilities. They really represent, for me, a way to understand architecture's core purpose. That the buildings that we provide in the world are serving us every day. They're essential to our lives. And hospitals really reveal that complexity, both where they're done well and also where they've kind of failed to achieve the best that they could do. The history of hospitals, I think, tells that story, this battle between all of our buildings, trying to serve our whole selves as well as function for the society itself. And those two things, the individual and the public, are always intertwined within our architecture. Be it a hospital, be it a school, be it one of these amazing temple we just saw, which is such a beautiful project, be it Mia's incredible work in our landscape. This work that we do is always about serving the public and the person. Taking this to larger and larger scale projects, we started to think about the other ways that buildings could allow us to heal. This is another project in Rwanda where we ended up building a team, now over 150 designers and builders. This is the first climate positive educational facility in the world. The Rwanda Institute of Conservation Agriculture is a 65 building campus which is rethinking the agricultural landscape of East Africa and trying to invest in new ways to imagine arable land with an increasing growing population on the continent. Every one of these projects is developed around what we call a 100-mile diet of material sourcing and labor, in this case all rammed earth construction, local harvested wood, locally harvested and composed tiles, and of course labor from this community as well. People were invested on this project, developing it during the pandemic, and it was one of the key projects that kept both our organization going but also the country going, where they allowed it to be built when the country was in lockdown. It's amazing to imagine that one of the other ways we think about our built environment helping protect our health is not just in our body, but also in the air above us, in the climate, and how much carbon we're emitting in the world. We all know that buildings are 40%, built environments, 40% of carbon emissions in our world. We're not going to solve the climate crisis without addressing how we build our buildings. But in this case, in particular, we need these pilot programs to advocate for that. So we're trying to do that here and thinking about the environmental footprint of the project. We also know that buildings can protect our landscape. We need crucial pieces of infrastructure to do so. This is a project also in Rwanda around the incredible advocacy of Diane Fossey in trying to save and protect the mountain gorillas in the northern part of the country when she went there in the mid-60s as a young woman alone, trying to think about how we could invest resources into protecting the mountain gorillas. It's a question of huge national park protection and conservation. What are the key pieces of infrastructure that can allow for further investment? The amazing Ellen DeGeneres here in LA got excited about this project and gave some key philanthropic gifts to allow this to happen. And we opened that this summer, a project which is built around trying to bring people to think about this landscape in a more comprehensive way, but also to protect and heal our close neighbors, the mountain gorillas that are unique to this landscape. You can see the stonework here in the wall is made by these amazing masons that we've worked with over the last 15 years, harvesting this stone, this incredible rock from the ground that's sometimes thrown away for free, and turning it into this craft that is now highly coveted in both the country and the region. And all of this is about thinking not just about the environmental footprint, but the human handprint of the buildings around us. And you can see, try to weave into this incredible landscape and be a part of this natural environment and recognize that there is built infrastructure and natural infrastructure that we have to cater, that we have to protect, that we have to think about its full performance in order to achieve these bigger goals like conservation, animal protection, habitat protection, as well as our own livelihoods. And you can see it here. The other way I think about healing and infrastructure is what are the key pieces of infrastructure that we invest in our communities. The ones that remind us of who we are, why we exist, what we need to memorialize and remember. Who are the people that we're heralding? What are the stories that we acknowledge? We know this question around our nation of memorialization and recognition is a key and important one. And how we do it as a community, the great Crenshaw project that's so impressive, how we do this as a collective community to acknowledge those stories and bring visibility to narratives and individuals that are often not recognized is one of the key things I think we're on a journey for in our nation and in each of our cities. In Boston, we're now under construction with the new Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King Memorial, which will be built in Boston Common. The great artist Hank Willis Thomas, our partner on this project, took this photograph of Martin and Coretta embracing each other after the win of the Nobel Peace Prize, and thought about the arms interlocking, this commitment to what Coretta called radical love, that belief in going out into a community and serving those you may not know or may not ever know. That belief in others, that belief in ourselves is the thing that keeps our society together. And it also can lift us up. So these arms intertwined on this plaza in America's oldest public park is a crucial piece of infrastructure that Boston and the community there has committed to. It was surprising we didn't have a memorial to King, to Martin in the city, and when one of the local philanthropists recognized this and said, I wanted to support that, the community pushed back and said, well, it can't just be about Martin, it has to also be about Coretta. Martin and Coretta met in Boston, of course, they went to school there, it's where they fell in love, it's where they were activated, and they built their kind of long-lasting partnership there. But I think there wasn't enough even to do Martin and Coretta, so we worked with the city to say, what could we also recognize in this plaza? These are the heroes that we often hear their stories of, but what about all of the unsung heroes of Boston? And so in the plaza, we have all the names of 65 other leading visionary advocates for social and economic justice who are kind of being lifted up, or lifting up this incredible sculpture which will open on King Day, Martin Luther King Day in January of next year. You can see it here under construction in Oregon just recently. This is a massive 22-foot tall sculpture will be a kind of new beacon, a new emblem of the city, and something which will, I think, change our orientation to both public art, to commitment to memorialization, to new narratives being recognized within the city. It makes us think that, this idea of healing social justice, this idea of investing in the infrastructure that we need to survive, it's not just a nice to have, it's a must have. It brings back this question of what's our rights that are being surrendered when we don't have that work? What does it mean to be in a hospital that doesn't serve your whole self, where you might get sicker? What does it mean to be in a community where the people that are recognized in the streets are those that have oppressed us for so many years, that have been fighting against our rights as individuals? The right to architecture, that thing that drives us even deeper to demand what we need, is something I think we can start to talk about more directly after the pandemic, because it's certainly our rights that have been threatened during this last thing, and our rights through the built environment are most evident, that have been visible to us after the pandemic. We learned this question about the right to architecture with this amazing project we had, and I had the privilege to work on with the incredible Brian Stevenson, one of the most visionary civil rights leaders of our day, when he had a vision to mark every site of terror lynchings against African Americans in our nation, and to build a national memorial in Montgomery, Alabama, of course, the city where Dr. King first ran as chaplain in 1954. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice opened in 2018. We designed it around these principles that Brian talks about of overcoming the toxic smog of racism in our country. What does it mean to overcome that? How do we go through a process of transformation? He talks about it in 5 stages. The first is that, of course, we have to recognize identity as a crucial piece of our own lived experience, something that we have to recognize others' definition of and respect that. He talks about discomfort as a crucial thing that we all have to experience, that anxiety that we must feel in order to kind of break through our own biases, getting close or proximate to communities that know the answers that we would never know. Narrative shifting, narrative change is a crucial piece of this transformation he talks about. And finally, hope. That hopelessness, he says, is the enemy of justice. That hope is the key driving force that's going to keep us thriving, that's going to keep us focused on the prize. Hope is what architecture is made manifest. Manifest in our built world is the sense of hope. Right? Something matters, that we can get there. That is what we do as in the building profession. That is what you all do, and we're recognizing here, we're honoring him. So the project was driven around these vignettes, these spatial vignettes, that we could actually experience them architecturally. That we could come up to one of these markers. 805 of them are here, built of Corten steel, which ages through time and weather and changes every day. And the counties in America where these terror lynchings occurred, with names we've often never said or sang or recognized, are listed there. And we begin to see and visualize and spatialize a landscape of injustice and terror and violence that undergirds our nation. That's identity. Discomfort is, of course, what happens when the floor drops beneath us and we recognize these markers lifting up above us, really us going beneath them. And we signal, of course, the lynchings that happened in the public square, where people were suspended or hung. We recognize that and we experience that. We feel the weight above us. We feel that transformation. We endure proximity and narrative change at this sort of chapel space in the lower levels of the memorial, where the markers are lifted so high above us we can no longer read the names. And that sense of the infinite and the intimate, we like to say the infinite and the intimate, come into view. We cannot any longer count them all, but we can sense the volume as massive. It is accountable and counted here. We know there's a total number, at least the ones we can account for, and there's a spatial metaphor and register for that unaccountable injury and violence that we haven't fully wrestled with in the nation. The final stages, we are brought into the center of the memorial. We're lifted up above those markers. We're just changing our orientation to the marker sectionally and spatially, and we look out over the city itself and see this as a new position, a new hierarchy, a new infrastructure that changes the narrative of the city itself and starts to recalibrate what we are building in our communities, what we need to build in the places we live, what we can do to heal from this historic traumas and sort of bring people out of the shadows, say their names, and start to overcome the kind of injustices that we see in each of our blocks and neighborhoods and cities so that we can be together again. One of the things that's important about memorials that we've learned is that people leave and want to do something, right? If we're transformed, we want to be given tools to enact change. And so the core design idea of this project was that there's a marker that's suspended above you in the National Memorial, but there's also a twin of that marker you can see here in the field. And if you're from that county in Mississippi or that county in Georgia where you find your marker, you can mobilize energy with your own community to bring that marker back, claim it, and place it in a public space of your own county. This idea that a memorial is participatory, ritualized, and demands action makes this a living thing. It suggests that it is incomplete, right? That there's action that needs to be taken for it to be fully realized. It also, I think, enables us to imagine architecture as that all the time. I learned that from hospitals. They're always under construction. Our cities are always changing. Our blocks are always shifting. Architecture is a living thing. The more we treat it, finance it, discuss it as a living thing, the more we might be able to imagine its performance over time and not just in a single period of time. When you look out and pull up the city of Montgomery, a place where people said we should never build this because no one would come, actually comes into view. This crucial piece of infrastructure has turned into a pilgrimage center for the nation. We've had almost 1 million visitors since 2018. We anticipated 125,000 visitors in the first 3 years. We've had so much more than that. The city of Montgomery has started to boom with economic development, a place that had no development in its downtown for years. The state of Alabama, and this is for the folks from doing financing, the state of Alabama has seen $2.2 billion in increased tourism revenue since this opened in 2018. An incredible number, an incredible commitment to the infrastructure that we need, and a belief that if we build it, they will come. It truly happens here. So much so that one of the things I talked about with Brian when we were doing this, imagining change that would come, is to actually acquire the land around the memorial, knowing that development would come, and to potentially be able to redirect that capital back into his organization, back into the communities that directly have survived here in this neighborhood adjacent to this project for so long, and also to share in the wealth and share in the generational wealth necessary to build more of this infrastructure and protect it over the next generation. All of that land, almost much of it empty, is now under development. That idea that we're taking as designers, artists, and architects, we're taking the risk, we're putting that value in place, and we're seeing that value produce real economic value. And that we're not always benefiting from that. Benefiting both on the back end, but also the communities that have been there for so long, not benefiting directly in their pockets. But we can change this, actually. We can adjust the way that we think about financing this crucial pieces of infrastructure. We can change the way we imagine the role of architecture and design as being both a catalyst for economic development, but also a partner in economic development. And we can suggest different financial models where local community members can buy in to the projects that they are going to live next to so they can benefit from their value itself. This is the idea that is clear to me, and actually where today I'm announcing the start of a new company that will be both design and development, so that we can be using this kind of catalytic infrastructure to build generational wealth opportunities for the communities around us. There doesn't seem to be any other way other than architecture being an antagonist to our world or a partner and ally to our families' survival and the health of our communities more in the future. I think these are the sort of great spatial awakening recognitions that we've all had. We walk into rooms today, we walk into buildings, and we ask ourselves, are we safe? Can we breathe? We're walking into communities and saying, is this for us? Do we feel safe? Do I belong here? We're bringing our family members to hospitals and schools, hoping that they survive. And we're all collectively around the world having those same thoughts. That's an amazing moment for us in the built environment. It's an incredible opportunity that the world, everyone in the world, is having a spatial awakening. And we have that opportunity right now to jump on that and say, yes, we can solve these problems, we can offer solutions, we can build new pilots and models, we can share in the value that we create in the world, and we can make more intentional and purposeful infrastructure that serves both ourselves and our public more directly. So with this, I just want to thank you for bringing me here and having me have an opportunity to end this great event. This incredible work going on here in Los Angeles. I'm really impressed by everything I saw today. Some real heroes are here of mine. It's just a wonderful thing to be part of this design community, and I have great gratitude for all of you going through dessert and sitting here through the end of this. So thank you very much.